just recorded a bit of a rant on Tony Bellew versus Nathan Cleverly. Why I don't think this should be a pay-per-view fight, and also that I don't rate the undercard. If you want to hear more about that, please check my channel. One fight on this undercard that I would at least class as interesting, certainly not a pay-per-view fight because it's a British title eliminator, but it's at least interesting, is Anthony Joshua versus Michael Sprott. Two guys who are names, and it'll be interesting to see how the fight goes. Arguably, this isn't really a step up for Anthony Joshua. By the time he steps in to face Sprott, he'll have fought Denis Baktov. He's just fought Konstantin Aretz. You'd have to say those guys were at least a similar level, comparable level to Michael Sprott. If Baktov fought Sprott tomorrow, I'd probably imagine Baktov may even be the favourite. So, I don't think it's a higher level of opposition for Joshua. I think it's a name, and it's a British domestic heavyweight matchup, and I think the combination of the two will make it interesting. I think a lot potentially depends on which Michael Sprott turns up, how seriously he takes it, and does he train. The fight's over 10 rounds. What would be interesting is if Sprott was able to take Joshua in deep and make him work into the later rounds. My question on that is whether Sprott will be fit enough. He seems to have had most of his success in prize fighter type formats recently, and whether he'll be able to go 10 himself. But I have some concerns over Joshua's build, how muscle bound he is, and whether that will affect his stamina going late into a fight. So I'd be interested if Sprott was able to take this into the later rounds. And despite the fact I make reference to the fact his success recently has come over prize fighter style formats, there is some form which suggests that Michael Sprott could be a durable opponent. He went 12 rounds with Alexander Dimitrenko in 2011. He went 9 rounds with Kubrat Pulev in 2012. He won a majority decision over 10 against Edmund Gerber in 2012. In 2013, he went the distance in a losing effort to Robert Helenius. That's some decent form. Helenius is known as a big puncher, a knockout artist, and the fact that Sprott went the distance with him suggests we're talking about a durable opponent who's got the potential to go deep into a fight and who isn't just going to fall over. Now, I've cherry-picked the best bits of Sprott's form there in an effort to make it look like a competitive fight. There are also elements of form which suggest that Joshua probably isn't going to be tested. So just to be fair and to give balance, he was knocked out in the Super 8 prizefighter style tournament in round 1 by Kali Meehan a few months back. He was also knocked out again in round 1 last year by Erkan Tepe, who's an unbeaten heavyweight, bit of a knockout artist, possibly one to keep an eye on. I think Sprott's form is very, very hit and miss. It doesn't make sense that you'd get knocked out by an aging Kali Meehan in 1 and then go 10 with Helenius. You know, go the distance with Dimitrenko but get knocked out by Erkan Tepe. What I'm saying is it depends very much how motivated he is, how much he wants to fight, and how much desire he's still got left really. Sprott's 39, so in the autumn of his career. I think what's interesting is Sprott has been a sort of mainstay of the domestic opposition for so long now. You know, he's been, like, I remember when he fought Danny Williams, Matt Skelton, Audley Harrison. You know, and it'd be certainly interesting to see Joshua in against him. Potentially if he goes and does a number on Sprott, you can say, well, how favourably does that compare to the job Hellenius did, which was actually I remember watching that fight, it was a close fight at points. But then by the same point, I think Sprott's got enough poor performances on his record to mean that even a devastating knockout by Joshua in the first doesn't necessarily mean he's the second coming at heavyweight, because obviously Sprott's been done by Kalimian and Tepper, which I've already referred to. In terms of stylistically, I think Sprott, to my eye, is best when he's using his jab. He's got a decent jab, he works well behind it, and we saw that to great effect when he won prize fighter heavyweights last time he fought in that tournament. With Joshua, who is a much taller man, rangier man, it's going to be very, very hard for Sprott to get that jab going. Joshua can work from more range. Joshua's jab is probably harder than Sprott's. It's going to be difficult. Obviously, there's no chance of, well, you'd have to say there's a 1 in a million chance that Sprott wins this one on points. Perhaps the only way, realistically, he could win it is if, he catches Joshua and it transpires that Joshua has a bit of a chin problem. But Sprott isn't the biggest puncher himself. He's fought 64 times, 42 wins, 22 losses. Of the 42 wins, he's won 17 by KO, so, not the biggest knockout ratio. Interestingly, of his 22 losses, he's been stopped 12 times. And I'm just scrolling through his record on BoxRec now. The last time he won by a KO was in 2010 against an opponent with a losing record. So it's dubious that Sprott has the power to cause Joshua any problems in terms of punch resistance and chin. In my opinion, with Sprott's sort of best asset being the jab in terms of winning points, and with Joshua being a sort of, I'm not totally convinced about Joshua, but he's got a decent jab, there's decent power in it. He throws it from decent range. It's too robotic for my liking, but I think he'll win the battle of jabs, and I think that's Sprott's best asset nullified. So I don't really see this as a fight which will end in anything but a Joshua win. I can't see an upset here. My prediction would probably be a knockout. I think whilst Sprott has showed some form which suggests durability, he's also showed some form that suggests vulnerability of chin, etc. And I think age 39, it's questionable how much desire he's going to have left, and whether or not he's just turning up for a payday. I don't see this as a step up for Anthony Joshua. I don't think he's going to pose any more threat than, say, a Dennis Baktov, for example. The fact it's a British title eliminator is interesting. My understanding is Fury Chisora will be for the British title, but whoever wins that will obviously vacate it immediately. And then I think Gary Cornish versus Ian Lewison was supposed to be an eliminator as well, but that fight lost its eliminator status when Lewison pulled out and Larry Olabamawo took over. So I don't know if Gary Cornish versus Anthony Joshua could potentially be a fight for the British belt next year maybe, but I don't really see them being too fussed about going down a British title route for Anthony Joshua. All in all, it's an interesting fight, namely because it's the most well-known opposition that Joshua's been in with, well-known on the British heavyweight scene, and on occasion the form on his record reads well. It's an intriguing fight, it's one that I'll enjoy watching, but it's not one that I see as competitive. I'd definitely be behind Joshua, and I'm the more I'm talking about it, the more I'm convinced it'll be an early stoppage. Would be very, very fascinating if Sprott turned up in great shape and showed his durability and, you know, went 10 like he did against Hellenius. I think that would make it a very interesting fight. It still doesn't merit making this card a pay-per-view fight, pay-per-view night even, and maybe I've already covered that in an earlier video, so I'll stop myself from ranting on. But yeah, interested to hear people's thoughts on this one. I predict Joshua round 2. Let me know what round you're going for.